The end of a long and extraordinary life. Britain's Queen Mother is dead.
Ever since my beloved mother died over a week ago, I have been deeply moved.
Of the Queen Mother, where today her grandsons paid a moving, historic tribute.
Mother has died in her 102nd year. She died at Windsor at 3:15 this afternoon.
Reports the woman known as the Queen Mum not only holds a unique place in the hearts of many British, but many Americans too.
Two would die there, peacefully in her sleep this afternoon, her daughter the Queen at her bedside.
7 years after the death of her beloved mother, the Queen led the nation in honouring her memory.
Greeted at Waterloo Station, where they have come to welcome home the Queen Mother from her visit to America and Canada.
A few moments ago, Buckingham Palace announced the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
We're interrupting our programs to inform you Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II has died.
We first heard not that long ago that doctors said she was in Balmoral.
The Queen has died, and long live the King. I'm not going to call him King Charles.
It is now official. Queen Elizabeth II, the longest-serving monarch of the United Kingdom.
Like that? It's like a good deer. I think it is.
After the race,
Behind, sombre and ready for a march that would not be easy for them, Princes Harry and William.
On the 4th of August 2000, a woman rode in an open carriage up the Mall toward Buckingham Palace. She was turning 100 years old. 40,000 people had come just to watch her wave. None of them knew they were watching the beginning of an ending. Her daughter, the Queen, had spent months making sure this day would be unforgettable. What nobody fully understood at the time was why she pushed so hard for it. 18 months later, that birthday would become the last truly joyful one this family would share. And what the Queen carried from that single August afternoon through the 2 brutal years that followed says more about her than almost anything else in her 70-year reign. This is the story of one birthday and the silence that came after it. The planning had started months earlier with a grand ball at Windsor. It wasn't billed as a solo celebration. The Queen folded it into a wider family milestone, marking Princess Margaret's 70th birthday, Princess Anne's 50th, and Prince Andrew's 40th in the same evening. On paper, it looked like efficient scheduling. 4 birthdays, 1 party. In practice, royal historian Hugo Vickers has pointed to this kind of layering as something the Queen did deliberately throughout her reign, folding personal milestones into shared occasions, so no single person's fragility or age ever had to stand alone in public view. By the time the actual day arrived, the centenary had grown into something far bigger than a family party. The Queen Mother had spent that summer making the rounds, a visit from Cinque Port mayors in Dover, a card and a military band outside her own gate, well-wishers camping out for 2 nights just to get a position near the palace railings. Then, on the 4th itself, she traveled by carriage with the Prince of Wales beside her, through streets packed with strangers who simply wanted to see her pass. When she reached Buckingham Palace, she stepped onto the balcony with both her daughters at her side. The King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery fired a 41-gun salute. It was the kind of farewell usually reserved for monarchs, not for mothers. And that's the part worth sitting with. The Queen Mother had never reigned in her own right. She became Queen Consort almost by accident, when her brother-in-law abdicated in 1936, and her husband, hesitant and unprepared, was suddenly King George VI. Within a few years, she was a wartime figure, staying in London through the Blitz, visiting bombed-out streets in the East End while German planes were still a real threat overhead. That refusal to leave was what built her reputation. Not glamour, but a kind of stubborn, visible solidarity with people who had nowhere else to go. By the time her husband died in 1952 and she became the Queen Mother, she had already spent over a decade as a symbol of staying put, when staying put was hard. She carried that role for 50 more years. Through divorces, through 1992's Annus Horribilis, through Diana's death in 1997. Always somewhere near the center of the family, without ever holding the crown herself. So when her 100th birthday arrived, the spectacle built around her matched anything thrown for a sovereign, and that wasn't tradition. There was no fixed rule that a 100th birthday required gun salutes. and a balcony appearance. It was the Queen's decision, made deliberately, and it reflected exactly how she ranked her mother's place in the story of this family. Behind the scenes, that same year had a far heavier shape. The Queen had only just returned from her 13th visit to Australia when planning for the centenary began in earnest. She was also already looking 2 years ahead, toward her own Golden Jubilee. 3 milestones were converging at once: her mother turning 100, her sister's health already quietly declining, and her own 50 years on the throne approaching. Vickers has written that this stretch asks something very specific of the Queen: to keep celebrating loudly in public while bracing privately for losses she couldn't yet name out loud. What she couldn't have known, standing on that balcony, was exactly how little time remained. The years right after the centenary were already harder than the cheering crowd suggested. She had broken bones in falls before, and would again, a hip replacement in her mid-90s, a fishbone lodged in her throat that required a brief hospital stay, fractures that kept her out of public view for stretches at a time. She retreated more and more to Royal Lodge at Windsor as her public appearances thinned out. None of that made headlines the way the birthday had. It simply happened quietly, the way most aging does, while the family kept up appearances around her. Then, within the same 18-month window, the structure of her family changed permanently. And it happened twice, in the span of just 7 weeks. Princess Margaret died in the early hours of the 9th of February, 2002. Her funeral was held on the 15th, 50 years to the day after their father, King George VI, had been buried at Windsor. 2 days before that funeral, the Queen Mother fell and cut her arm. She attended anyway. Nobody who was present described her as anything but upright, present, and determined to see her younger daughter laid to rest properly. 3 days after Margaret's funeral, the Queen left for Jamaica, the first stop on a 2-week Golden Jubilee tour that had been locked into the royal calendar for years. She didn't cancel it, but she called her mother every single day she was away. That detail rarely makes the highlight reels of that spring, yet it may be the clearest window into what was actually happening inside this family. A queen managing a nation's celebration with one hand and her mother's failing health with the other, 4,000 miles apart. The Queen Mother died on the 30th of March 2002 at Royal Lodge, Windsor. She was 101. She wasn't alone. Her daughter was there, along with several of Margaret's grandchildren and her niece, Margaret Rhodes. What followed was an honor almost never extended to anyone outside a reigning sovereign. Her coffin lay in state at Westminster Hall for 4 days, guarded around the clock, while roughly 200,000 people filed past to pay their respects. At one point, her 4 grandsons, Charles, Andrew, Edward, and Viscount Linley, mounted the guard themselves, a gesture known as the Vigil of the Princes, last performed for a king. On the morning of the funeral, the tenor bell of Westminster Abbey rang exactly 101 times, once for every year she'd lived. 10 million people in Britain alone watched it on television. The night before that funeral, the Queen did something she rarely did. She gave a televised address speaking directly to her mother by name, calling her beloved. She thanked her on camera for the love she had given throughout her life and for the honor the nation was now giving her in death. It was a short address. It was also one of the most personal things the Queen ever said publicly about anyone in her family, mother included. After the service at the Abbey, the coffin traveled on to Windsor, where the Queen Mother was finally laid to rest beside her husband in the King George VI Memorial Chapel. The same chapel, the same arrangement, that had waited for her for 50 years. It was, in its own quiet way, the last piece of a story that had started with a wedding in 1923 and a young woman who never expected to be queen of anything. Here's where the two moments connect. The 100th birthday, with its carriages and gun salutes and 40,000 strangers cheering in the mall, was never just about marking a number. It was the Queen making certain her mother received, while she could still hear the crowd and see the balcony, every bit of honor that might otherwise have waited for a eulogy. Vickers has suggested that royal families often save their grandest tributes for funerals, when the person being honored can no longer witness them. The Queen seems to have refused that pattern entirely. She brought the guns, the balcony, the carriage ride, while her mother was still standing there to feel it. That choice is what people close to the family kept returning to in the months that followed. Not the funeral itself, formal and dutiful as it was, but the birthday. The one where nobody was mourning yet. The one where the only thing being marked was a woman who'd simply lived a very long time and was loved enough that an entire capital turned out just to watch her ride past. There was a wider story playing out underneath all of this too. Commentators at the time predicted that the Golden Jubilee, arriving just months after 2 deaths in the family, would be a quiet, muted affair. A damp squib, as more than one outlet put it. It wasn't. The Queen attended every official celebration as scheduled, alongside her husband, and the public turned out for the Jubilee in numbers nobody had forecast. Whatever she was carrying privately that year, she didn't let it shrink the public side of her duty. If anything, the warmth on display that August in 2000 may have been part of why the public response in 2002 went the way it did. People had already been shown vividly how much this family valued the woman they were now being asked to mourn. What stayed with the Queen, by most accounts, wasn't the loss itself so much as its timing. Burying a sister and a mother within 7 weeks in the very year she was meant to be celebrating 50 years on the throne. She carried both, publicly, without pausing the Jubilee tour, without rescheduling a single engagement that hadn't already been moved. Whatever grief that required her to manage privately, she handled it the way she'd handled nearly everything else for half a century. Quietly, on her own terms, almost entirely out of view. Those who worked closest to her during that spring described nothing dramatic, no visible collapse, just a woman who kept her diary exactly as planned, and somehow also called Windsor every night from wherever the tour had taken her that day. If there's one thing this stretch reveals about her, it's that the warmth she showed her mother on that 100th birthday wasn't sentiment performed for cameras. It was preparation, whether she recognized it consciously or not, for a goodbye that arrived faster than anyone around her expected, and that she met the same way she met everything, by simply continuing. She'd already given her mother the tribute most families save for a eulogy. The funeral, the bells, the 200,000 people in Westminster Hall, all of that only confirmed in 2002 what the carriage ride and the gun salute had already said in 2000. That's the story behind one birthday, 2 losses 7 weeks apart, and a televised farewell still replayed every year near the anniversary of her mother's death. If you want more of these deep dives into the moments that shaped the Queen's private world, subscribe to Royal Archives. There's more of this history still to uncover.